All right. So, like I said, I'm part of the Alzheimer's support group. So I'm living and breathing Medicaid all the time. You've got all of the knowledge on the um, elder care side, and I read your book.
You'd read the book. Oh, and
Notes
you,
here.
oh my God, and you have clippies on it. Oh, very nice.
Well, but
Excellent.
it's from 2010. So
Yeah. So, well, that's the interesting thing about it. I was just talking, we were at a social worker meeting today. There's pretty cool. There's probably about 300 people there. And we like to give them that book because it helps them understand, even though they're social workers, they may not understand the Medicaid thing as well as they could. And so the comment is that, yeah, you wrote this in 2010. And my reply is that, yeah, everything I wrote in there is still valid. And the philosophy and the techniques and the things that are available and that there are solutions to this problem. That's the purpose of that book, is to give you all of that insight. Really, the only thing that's changed dramatically since the book was written are the numbers for eligibility, the income limits and the asset limits.
and what are they right now?
Well, if you're looking at qualifying for Medicaid to pay for the cost of care in a nursing home, which is kind of what we do, Medicaid's going to look at what your income is and what your assets are. There are caps for both of those numbers. On the income side, the person applying for Medicaid is only allowed to have $2,829 of gross income per month. So a lot of words are in there. If we talk about the applicant, if the applicant's married, for example, don't add the spouse's income into that. It's not a combined income. It's really just the income of the applicant. 2,829 is the magic number. It's a gross income number, which is a concept that most of us don't deal with very often. Most of us are dealing with net income because that's what we put in the bank and that's what we can spend. So when I ask you, well, what's your income? A lot of times a client will reply what they're putting in their bank every month. That's not their gross income.
Right.
One of the big things that comes out of your check, let's say on your Social Security side, for example, is there's a Medicare Part B premium coming out of there. Well, that's $174. You got to add that back in to get up to the actual gross number. And since that 2,829 number that's a bright line. You're over by $1, you're disqualified for benefits. And that 174, that Part B that's coming in, can make the difference, can push you over the line. So that's an important number. You got to make sure you're at or below the 2829 number. A little footnote here, though, is if you are over that number, you have too much income to qualify. You can get eligible, or you can actually pass that income test, so to speak, by using a solution called an income trust. Sometimes it's called a qualified income trust. Sometimes it may be referred to as a Miller trust. That's an older name, but it's still out there floating around. But bottom line, having too much income, you can still qualify for benefits. You just have to use this tool. So also another footnote on the whole income side of things, income, the way it's treated in other states may be radically different. Some states don't look at what your income is to determine your eligibility. In Florida does. So this is one of the two financial tests. The other financial test that state of Florida looks like to determine your eligibility is they're going to look at what you got, so to speak, your assets. Your assets, well, that's a little tricky because the state of Florida has two different asset limits or caps. They have one for people that are married and they have one for a person who's single. A married couple can have, let's say, $156,000 in countable assets and still be able to qualify for Medicaid benefits. The concept of countable assets is important because some things aren't counted. So when you're looking at how much money you have to determine your eligibility, don't count the value of your house, don't count the value of your car. So it's really all the other stuff that you have.
What's the single cap?
Well, let's talk about that. It's a little different, slightly different. A single person applying for Medicaid benefits to pay for the cost of care in a nursing home. Medicaid says in order to be eligible, their asset limit has to be $2,000 or less.
Okay.
So when I say a little different, that's a teeny bit of sarcasm. Okay. It's a lot different. And So you're looking at the numbers, 156,000 if you're married, 2,000 if you're single. So from my perspective, those numbers kind of don't really matter that much in a way. And that's a weird statement. They determine whether initially you're eligible for benefits, because if you're below the 156, then you pass the asset test. If you're single and you happen to have less than 2,000, I would say that would probably be rare. But if you're below that $2,000 number, then you pass the test and you're eligible. But the reason why I say they don't matter as much is because, that's kind of a starting point for the discussion. Are you eligible right now? Okay, well, let's assume that you're not. Let's assume that you're above that cap amount and you have too much assets to qualify. Then it kind of becomes a bit of a math problem. How much do you have? Subtract what you can keep. And that answer is how much you have to deal with in order to preserve, to protect, to somehow deal with in order to get eligible for Medicaid benefits. And the cool thing about this is that it kind of doesn't really matter at the end how much assets you have, because there are things that can be done in order to preserve and protect them to qualify for benefits.
So the spoiler alert is you can always fix it. If they have millions, you could redirect it. But I got a quick question. I'm going to interject here, reading the book. The house, the value of the house, you said it doesn't count, but is there a limit on the value of the house?
There is a limit. The federal government changed the rules in Medicaid a couple of years ago. It used to be an unlimited value. Now I think it changes every year because it's indexed for inflation. I think it's around 680,000 or thereabouts as what the value of the home is. There are some ways to adjust that issue and fix that. I can tell you the vast majority of my clients in the last couple of years that this has been an issue have never had an issue with the value of their home, keeping them out from being eligible for benefits.
Okay, well, that's good. But I had read 500,000 in your book and I'm going, oh, a lot of the property values have gone way up now.
Well, the bad news is yes, they're counting the value of the home. The good news is it's indexed. So back in the day when the book was written, let's say it was 500,000. And I think it's closer to 680 or something. I always have to look it up, mostly because it's never a problem for the 99.999% of our clients. But yes, technically it could be. So. Okay.
Now I'm going to keep in. Okay. Now we're purist. We're looking at nursing home. You've got a spouse that you can no longer care for at home, or you particularly need to go into a nursing home.
Correct.
The personal care contract, because we know the nursing homes don't always have the level of care that we want for our loved one.
Right.
So that was my first practical question. What do we do about a personal care contract? Let's say I've got you protecting my assets and all that, getting me qualified. Tell me about that.
Well, so the idea here is that, and the state of Florida actually recognizes this, is that you should be, and you are entitled to pay somebody for additional help. It can either be direct kind of private duty aid type situation in the nursing home, or it can be paying somebody to do things that the nursing home isn't doing. If you're think about it, hypothetically, you're trapped in a nursing home. You can't get up, you can't go around, you can't do your banking. It's hard to see your CPA. It's hard to talk to your lawyer. It's hard to do this, manage your house, do all of these things that we normally take for granted. If you're kind of stuck inside of a nursing home, how are you going to solve those problems? Well, the law clearly says is that you can pay somebody to do that. And so the technique or the thing that we do here is we kind of document that arrangement so that the money coming from the Medicaid applicant or the Medicaid recipient to somebody else to pay for these things doesn't look like it's a gift. Medicaid's super sensitive about the whole giving things away issue, as you can imagine. Right. So when it comes time to applying for benefits, one of the things, if money's coming out of that person's account, Medicaid's going to be interested in that and say, hey, what's this right here? And it's like, oh yeah, well, we're paying that money to somebody, or we paid that money to somebody. And Medicaid's retort or the response will be, oh, really? Okay, well, prove it. And so this whole contract thing allows you to kind of get in place, documentation that proves that arrangement so that it's not considered a gift. And we do this routinely. It's a very powerful technique. It has been litigated in the state of Florida. The department, Medicaid, didn't really like it, to be honest with you. They were kind of like, oh no, you can't pay somebody for these things. And they lost that case in pretty large fashion. And the court clearly said, listen, you can't stop somebody for paying for something that they can use or that they can need. You can't. You can't say you can't pay it to a family member, who you can pay it to. You cannot stop a person from paying for services that they need or that they want. So it's a
I
solid,
love that.
yeah.
Love that. All right, so here's my next question. We have some caregivers in our group that they have their own problems now. They're survivors, what we call survivors.
Yep, understand.
And they want to live at home. They don't
Right.
want to go into a nursing home, even though they're told they can't live alone. Is there any, I was recommending get qualified for Medicaid. It may be going into a nursing home, but is there any alternative to having any care at home?
Well, so I think I understand your question. So let me just take a half a step back. Traditionally, Medicaid has been used to pay for the cost of care inside of a long-term care facility, which is the fancy way of saying a nursing home, right? Or a skilled nursing facility, also another fancy way of saying that. So that was kind of the traditional thing that we would use Medicaid for. However, reality is that sometimes you don't need to be in a nursing home. You don't want to be in a nursing home. There may be a less restrictive solution than going into the darn nursing home. And so those less restrictive solutions can be care inside of your home or care, excuse me, inside of an assisted living facility. And as we're moving through that types of care start to become very expensive as well. I mean, you look at assisted living spectrum there, let's say started around $3,000, and you can easily be at $7,000 a month, especially for memory specific care. So this is no small amount of money. Traditionally, though, Medicaid only helped us with the darn nursing home. Okay, so the reality is maybe I don't want to be there. And well, will Medicaid help me at home or in an assisted living facility? So the answer to that question is yes, there is the option of obtaining Medicaid benefits to assist you with paying for the cost of that care inside your home or an assisted living facility. Has a little bit of a different, it plays a little bit differently, I like to say. It's not exactly the same as the Medicaid in the nursing home. It also pays differently than nursing home Medicaid. Nursing home Medicaid essentially pays for all the cost of that care minus a contribution of that person's income. So that's pretty much a silver bullet financially as far as solving the problem is concerned. On the home or assisted living type of Medicaid, that type does not pay for all the cost of care. It only contributes towards the cost. It helps you pay for some of it. So throwing around just kind of a number here, it's not exactly, but it's a good number we can get our hands on, so to speak, wrap our mind around it. Let's say Medicaid in a home or assisted living setting will pay for about $1,500 a month towards the cost of that care. The remaining cost is on the person's obligation to pay.
Whereas that's back in the memory care. I do know some people that are looking at it from memory care, and there's like 27 different insurance companies that can administer the Medicaid portion of that. And they change that, the amount is different. It can be anywhere from 1,000 to, like you said, 1,500, 1,600.
Correct.
I could name someone, but I don't have any experience with them, so it wouldn't make any difference. No, but have you ever heard of the PACE program?
I have. I'm a big fan of PACE.
I've talked to a couple of times. I don't have a lot of experience. So if I get qualified with Medicaid, that's normally a full boat if I go into a skilled nursing facility. But if I decide to go instead and stay at home, which is I can get some benefit with PACE.
So you can get Medicaid benefits in the home, and you can also get PACE benefits in the home. It's kind of a this or that choice. It's like left or right turn.
Okay.
So Medicaid is a different solution for the home and assisted living care versus PACE. So and I'm a huge fan of PACE, by the way. PACE rolled out, I think, about 20 years or so in our community. I was on the board of directors for Neighborly Care Network at the time. And Neighborly was the person, the lead agency, so to speak, that was in charge of implementing PACE in Pinellas County. That baton has been handed off to Empath. Again, Empath is a fabulous organization, great corporate culture, deep roots, very, very caring people. I'm effusive in my, praise for them as well. They're amazing. So they are the ones that are administering PACE right now. So when we talk, and again, I'm an absolute huge fan. I have many, many, many of my clients on the PACE program. So here's the difference though. PACE and Medicaid, they're kind of do similar things. Interestingly enough, PACE is actually, this is in the weeds a bit, PACE is actually a Medicaid provider. So in order to become eligible for the PACE program, you have to qualify for Medicaid benefits.
So
So
that's
it's
what
same test, right? So, and I know I say this and it doesn't make sense. PACE is Medicaid, but it's not Medicaid. I know that sounds weird, but it's actually a true statement. So, but let's compare and contrast for a second between Medicaid for home care and assisted living care versus PACE for that type of care. One of the challenges on the Medicaid side of things to get this care in the home or assisted living is that particular program has a capped or limited participation, or another way of saying it, only so many people can be on that particular type of Medicaid at a time, the way state of Florida budgets this. They have a hard number, and that only takes care of so many people.
per county? Is that a per county number?
It is per county, but it's actually for the whole state, basically.
Okay.
It's a portion across the districts. But bottom line is there's a cap, there's a limit of how many people that can be on the program, and the program always runs full. So every time I take a sip of water when I'm ever doing a presentation like this, I think about that guy, Marco Rubio. And you might have seen him do that. That was a really bad time for him when he did the water during the presidential State of the Union response. That, you'll know about that.
Well, you at least have your name on the cup.
Well, yeah.
I don't. I just have a glass.
So the new joke is you know that you finally made it when you have a Yeti with your own name on it. Okay.
Somebody in your office was thinking about you. I'm sure you didn't think of that.
It was nice. Yeah, they even they put our logo on the backside and it says Legal Advocates for Aging Americans. So yeah, these are really actually pretty nice.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a product placement, but thank you for noticing. So let's jump back on.
I heard it had limited participation, and actually I heard they had some openings right now, and that's why I was kind of.
So let's talk about that. Yeah, let me give you kind of the 411 and the background on that. This is something that there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding on it. And again, I'm going to compare and contrast this to PACE. So Medicaid is this capped or limited participation program. And what that means in real practical sense is that the program is always full. Even though if I can check all the boxes for Medicaid eligibility regarding your assets and your income and all the other requirements, I still can't get you on Medicaid for home or assisted living care because there's no room at the end. This is a problem. So what the state of Florida has done is they have come in and they've created something called the Enrollment Management System. And I always used to kind of joke a little bit about that because it seems like an overly bureaucratic way of saying waiting list. So, is that a waiting list? Nope, no waiting list, but we do have an enrollment management system that you have to process through. I'm like, okay, great. It's a waiting list. Okay. But to their credit, and it does seem overly bureaucratic and overly stilted kind of name for it, but it is more of a system. Because a waiting list is typically prioritized based on time. You go to Outback on a Friday at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, you ain't getting no table. So what do? They put you on the waiting list, and the first person off that list is the first person that gets the next table. That's not how Medicaid works.
No.
Medicaid prioritizes your selection off of that list, basically based upon how sick you are relative to all the other people that are trying to get on the program. Now, I use this word sick, and it's kind of my simple way of saying it. It's, sick. What sick means is how much help do you need? how dire are your circumstances? You know, if we leave you alone in your house for 10 days and we don't come see you or check on you, what do we come back to? Okay.
Yeah.
And in the world of cognitive issues and memory, that's a tricky bit of business because that affects everything in your life. You can't deal with your medication. You can't deal with eating. You can't deal with bathing. You can't deal with getting yourself clothed. This can have a very, very bad result. Now, sometimes we don't think of it that way because we're kind of propping that person up and helping them meet these deficits on a regular basis. So it doesn't look that dire. But what we tell our clients, yeah, but if you're going to go to Disney for 10 days and leave them home by themselves, again, what do you come home to? And then a lot of times they're like, oh, wow, they would be dead. Because all of a sudden it's this epiphany, like, oh, so that's what I mean by sick. Another way I reference this is I call it a direness score. How dire is the circumstance? And that's a good way of looking at it because, again, the state is trying to find that situation where the person is in the most dire need.
I call it urgency of need.
Urgency of need. I mean, how, you know, if house is on fire, well, how high are the flames?
Or they living out of their car.
Correct. Well, you know,
Yeah.
there's so a direness can come through a lot of different situations. And the interesting thing is that the state will actually, they process you through what's called, we call it an intake evaluation, where this is all super technical, but the Aging and Disability Resource Center, which in our community in Pinellas County is the Area Agency on Aging. So you basically need to call them and ask to be processed to have an interview to see how dire your circumstances are. So they schedule you an interview, and then they're going to ask you, it's about an hour and a half long process, actually. And they ask you these pages and pages of questions. And at the end of that, they will, in some sort of crazy dystopian sci-fi world, assign a number to you of 1 through 5. If you get a 1, there's really good news. You're pretty healthy. And there's also some real bad news. You're never getting on the program. On the other side of the spectrum, the 5s, I have some really good news. Within 30 to 60 days, you should probably expect an invitation to participate on the program. Awesome. And I have some really, really bad news. You're probably pretty super sick. So it's this wild world, 1 through 5. And in practical terms, if you have a 3, 2, or 1, let's say that, you're never getting on the program. If you have a 4.
Do you ever know what your number is?
Yeah. Oh, heck yeah, man. They will send a letter after your interview and it says your priority ranking score is, and they'll tell you what your number is.
Because we tried it for my mom who had
Right.
Alzheimer's. But 2 things. My dad got interviewed and I wasn't there. Never in 2.5 years did we get approved. Even though all the assets were protected, but I don't think he ever did that spousal refusal either that you talk about, which you said most of your clients won't do. He would never say, I would never not pay for her care. So she was safe in a place.
But that wasn't the problem. The problem was you never got the invitation. Because you went through did you go through those questions that I was just talking about?
He did. I wasn't there when he went through those questions. And I don't know what number he got, but he
again, if you don't get a 5, you're not getting on. A 4, possibly. 3, 2, or 1, it ain't happening. So answering these questions is very, very important on how you answer them. And here's the sad news is that all of us, me, you, everybody that's listening to what we're talking about here, we're socialized in our society to minimize the nature of the problem.
Yes.
I go to you, go, hey, how you doing today? What are you going to say?
I'm okay.
Yeah, and then ask me, hey, Sean, how you doing? Hey, I'm pretty good, thanks. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, doing fine. So, Sean, how's mom doing? Not so bad. She's got her up days and her bad days, and but overall we're making it. She's doing pretty good. Mom's 99 years old. She has Alzheimer's. She's had Alzheimer's for the last 7 years. She doesn't know her name is. She doesn't know what a fork is. If I point her in one direction, she ain't going to be able to find her way back out of the bedroom.
So when they do this interview, is someone allowed to be there with them, or who?
Well, good question. So they're not so let's use mom, the 99-year-old, right? So let's say I'm trying to get her on this waiting list, and because she is experiencing some issues, but we think if we had some help in the home right now, we'd be a lot better. And That would be great. So let's see if we can get Medicaid to help us. So they're going to go through an interview over the phone, not with her to ask her how she is. They're going to be asking me how she is. And so my answers to that questions become very, very important. And if I play that card where, oh yeah, she's not doing too bad, she's okay, good days and bad days, I'm getting a 2, right? Which
Yeah.
means I'm never getting any help. And the
Right.
problem here is that we all do this. That's how we get to tomorrow, is we minimize it. Nobody can even think about this, how the horror of some of these situations. You can't live in that world. You got to almost lie to yourself that it's okay. And not only that, we're socialized to minimize anyways. So here's the point on that, is we have a major session with our clients where we review all of the questions that they're going to be asked. And we go through each one of these and we point out don't take this the wrong way, the correct way to answer these questions. Okay.
Yes.
When they ask you how much help does mom need with eating? Most people, and this is actually one of the questions, most people think that eating is taking the fork from the plate to their mouth. That's not eating. Eating is going to Publix, buying the food, bringing the food back, putting it in the refrigerator, taking it out 3 times a day, making it, eating it, putting it back, and rinsing
Cutting
and
it.
repeating every day.
Yeah, cutting it.
But the whole 9 yards. So it's not just this. This is not eating, okay?
Yeah.
But people are asked this question. They're like, yeah, she's okay. She does all right, because they're thinking this. So I need to point out that's not what they're talking about.
Right.
And your memory impaired, cognitively impaired person, they will not eat unless you make it happen for them. That means they need total assistance, not that they're okay. See the difference? Well, but then, good days and no, that's not what's happening. So here's the problem with this, is that it's so ingrained in us. I actually repeat myself about at least a half a dozen times over this. I kind of think of myself as beating them over the head to break this tendency, because it's super, super easy to fall into that rut. And let me give you just 30 seconds of insight into that. Back in the day, I used to be able to do this interview for my clients. They would let me answer the questions regarding the nature of the situation. They won't let me do that anymore. So I can't do that for my clients.
But you know what
However,
the
there
questions
are
are.
rare occasions I do, and I give them to the client too. So you're not going to be, I mean, not only do I know the questions, I know how to answer the questions. And here's the point. So every now and then I do it because I'm the healthcare surrogate or power of attorney for the client. And now I can answer those questions. And so we were going through this a couple of months ago for a client. And I tell you, they're asking me all the questions right off the list. I know what's coming. I know how to answer this. And they start talking about, well, how are they doing with this? How are they doing with that? And you know what I started doing? Minimizing. Well, they can a little bit, not so bad. I couldn't believe it. The words that were coming out of my mouth were blowing my brain up. I'm like, you're doing exactly what you tell your client not to do.
Yeah.
That's how insidious this is.
Yes.
So, regardless, back to my actual point I was trying to make, is there's a difference between PACE and Medicaid. Medicaid is going through this interview to determine how sick you are. And if you're not sick, not in a dire situation, you're not getting on the program. That is annoying, because a lot of our clients, a lot of the people that you work with, they're not there yet. They're on the journey, but they're not there yet where they're that sick, but they're on the train. They're not getting on Medicaid if they're not going to score well. And you can only answer those questions with so much subjectivity before there's only so far you can go, right? I mean, you just can't make stuff up. So on the other side, there's PACE. And one of the things I love about PACE is that they're exactly the opposite of Medicaid. So instead of looking for the person that's the most dire, the sickest of the sick, the most dangerous kind of house on fire type situation, PACE is actually looking for the people on the other end of the spectrum, the healthier client, not healthy, but healthier. They
can still age in place.
They have a need, but yeah, they have a need, they have something. And PACE is like, we would love them to be on the program. And once you're on PACE, PACE will follow you all the way through all the different levels of care. But you got to get on the PACE train, to use that analogy again, when you're healthier versus sicker. So
Both of
this,
these two people I was talking to you about, I think, are PACE, but they still need you. They need you for the qualification on Medicaid. They need you for the setting up the power of attorney and all of the legal documentation, and for the questions, so that when they have this interview, it's kind of like you're going through this tunnel and you have no flashlight.
correct. It's interesting that you should say that. Because the way I describe what we do for our clients is you're kind of in a dark room and it's just pitch black in there. And there's a lot of fear in that kind of a situation. You don't know what's out there. I mean, and your brain takes over and it's a very fearful and a lot of anxiety and not a good place to be. So what we look at ourselves is that we look at that what we do is we're your flashlight. So you turn the flashlight on and all of a sudden, all those fears go away and all the anxiety goes away because now you're in control. You can see where the problems are. You can avoid them and we can solve the problem and get out of the room.
Did you have that terminology before I even said that?
Yeah, that's a common way I describe what we do. I'm not just
That's
making
funny.
this stuff up. Come on.
Well,
No,
it's so accurate. Yeah. I mean, because we only have a few more minutes left on this one, but 'cause I want to do this again, I got to go deeper into a couple of other
no
topics.
problem.
But PACE is the main thing that I think that some of my colleagues are at. They really have this aging in place. Our experience with the nursing home situations, and it's not nursing home for most Alzheimer patients anyway, but right up front, it's been a nightmare for the caregiver. So those are the two things that I think that I want to emphasize with them, as the PACE and also the personal care contract.
Yep.
So,
We use that routinely. It's a very good tool. And I'm glad you brought up PACE because there's not a lot of information out there on it. It's unfortunate. It's a great program. I don't know that this is 100% true, but I've been told, the rumor has it that 70% of the people that are on PACE in Pinellas County are my clients.
how many?
70%.
Wow. Wow, that is a big number.
I'm a big fan.
Good.
So.
Okay,
And
well,
the unfortunate reality, not so many people know about it. And so I do, and I love this. It's so helpful for my clients and is really a great solution, especially in the earlier stages of this journey. And the point of that whole thing is that it's a timing issue. So if we wanted to kind of like our last thing for today is that when do you go out and take action? And, I don't know, in my personal life, sometimes I can procrastinate a little bit about things, right? Oh, I'll get to it. There's literally a battery in the back of my car for my other car that doesn't work because I haven't gotten to the point of getting it out of one car and and it's not even hard to do, but
we need to have done all this yesterday. We all know that. We've all been in denial with the people that we need to care about. So if they want to get in touch with you, what's the easiest way for them to get in touch with you, Sean?
A couple of different ways, but the easiest way is just the old school. Give us a call at 727-539-0181. Get on our schedule. I do I think a cool thing that most lawyers don't do anymore is that there's a no charge consultation. Come into the office, bring your documents with you. Let's sit down and have a discussion. Is this the right time to take action? Is your power of attorney that you have any good? Footnote, most of them aren't. So that's a huge problem. And come in, let me take a look at it. Have a cup of coffee with us. Let's see what's going on. See if there's things that we should be doing now. We can talk about PACE. We can talk about Medicaid. When, how big of an issue should you have? When should you start planning? Can we delay it? What about your estate plan? We haven't even talked about that. Husband and wife.
No, I know that's what we need to get into, because power of attorney for financial is, to me, a huge abuse issue sometimes. But anyway,
there's so many issues there, but not having one is the biggest.
Yeah. All right, so you have other videos on YouTube, right?
Yep, we have a couple of stuff on our YouTube channel. I think you can get to it from our website, it's super easy. FL, like Florida, flmedicaid.com.
Okay, because one of the people I'm talking about cannot drive anymore. They're not able to drive. So, and the
We
other
do
one
a lot of
has,
we do a lot of virtual stuff like this.
yeah,
with
we'll
our
do
clients
virtual.
with the phone. We have clients from Pensacola to Key West. So, and a
Okay,
lot of them have never been into the office.
all right. Well, great. I'm gonna call Carla and get back on your schedule
Excellent.
again.
Yeah, I
Am I
can't
allowed
wait.
to do that?
We got more.
Okay.
Yes, yes, we got more to talk about. And so thanks for letting me be here and talk with you. This is a passion of mine to be able to share this knowledge. So much so that I know you recorded it today, and you're not going to lose that recording, are you?
No, I'm gonna stop it right now and have it start